Chapter 361. Brother, you are the one who is stubborn. Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. The sounds of battle still echoed through the clan grounds. Bodies lay scattered, blood streaking into the rain until it washed away. Yu Yuanzhen, wounded and exhausted, knelt in the mud and stared at the four hair, titled Douluo before him, Qianjun, Jiangmo, Shilong, and Shishui. Luomian, take the clan disciples and withdraw first, he gasped. I'll hold them off here. A sudden, searing pain tore through his chest. A gleaming short sword had pierced his heart. Blood flowed steadily. Yuanzhen's eyes fixed on Luomian. Big brother, I didn't want this either, he managed. But you're incorrigible, Luomian shot back. You're trapped in the past. Knowing it's impossible, you still cling to pride and refuse to change. If this goes on, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan will only march toward destruction, be swallowed by the current, and vanish into the long river of history. With me, the clan will not perish. We will rebuild it to its former glory. Luomian closed his eyes and wrenched the short sword free from Yuanzhen's chest. Yuanzhen's body slumped, powerless. Those who are willing to follow me, come with me to rebuild the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan, Luomian declared. Those who aren't, stay here forever. He swept his gaze over the remaining disciples. Some moved toward him, others stood their ground and stared back with loathing. Qianjun gave a cold, decisive wave. Leave none of those who are unwilling, he ordered. The two groups surged together. Those who resisted were cut down one after another. Gradually, the fighting died away, and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan fell silent. Tiando Royal Palace, the Emperor's bedchamber. An unconscious emperor, Xueye, lay on the bed, and Shui Qinghe watched him with an unreadable calm. The door opened, and Shui Ke entered, collapsing into tears at the sight of her father. Shui Qinghe's expression tightened. He slipped a hand beneath his sleeve, and the glint of a dagger appeared in his palm as he took a step toward Shui Ke. At the last moment, his face changed. He closed his fingers around the dagger and withdrew it. Gently, he patted Shui Ke's shoulder. It's all right. Father's health has been declining for years, he said softly. Let him rest a while. He led Shui Ke out of the chamber, and once they were gone, he lingered in thought. How should I arrange for Shui Ke? He wondered aloud. Perhaps send her to Shier's fief, let her live out the rest of her life without worry. Before he realized it, he had reached the Crown Prince's palace and sat down. He watched the still sobbing Shui Ke and tried to comfort her with a few pats on the back. Time slipped by unnoticed. Footsteps sounded at the door, and the gate opened. Yeshi was just about to lift her mask when she caught sight of Shui Qinghe's hand resting familiarly on Shui Ke's shoulder. A flash of displeasure crossed her face, and without a second thought, she spun and left. Shui Qinghe's hand moved away from Shui Ke as she turned. Will she understand? He murmured. After all, by public identity, Shui Ke and I are still siblings. Outside, a loud crash announced Yeshi's temper. She had punched a giant tree and brought it crashing down. She glared at the fallen trunk, then fixed her eyes on Ling Yuan, Ghost Leopard, Shi Long, Si Shui, and the others, who watched her with puzzled expressions. What are you staring at? She snapped. It's just a tree. What's so interesting? Her attention narrowed. Have the battle losses been tallied? Have pensions for the fallen been distributed? Are the ordinary people settled? Have the supplies been inventoried? There's a mountain of work left. Why are you just standing here? She kicked a stone and walked on, leaving the group exchanging confused looks. On the rooftop, Guangling grinned and put a hand on Qianjun and Jiangmo's shoulders. See, the little vinegar jar has tipped over, he said with amusement. Qianjun smiled faintly. No need to go check. In Heaven Dew City right now, the only people who might threaten Miss Shi are our own. If anyone actually picks a fight with her, they'll find themselves very unlucky. Jiangmo folded his arms, thoughtful. After ensuring Shui Ke had been taken back to her residence, Shui Qing left the palace and, after asking which way Yeshi had gone, made for Frost Snow Pavilion. Frost Snow Pavilion. The hall was busy. Yeshi sat in the main seat, pouting and nibbling pastries, her eyes sweeping the room. Everyone worked on their assigned tasks, but kept one anxious thought in mind. Who had angered their pavilion master? Even Tian Yao and Ye Lingling peered through a crack in the door, but as soon as Yeshi glanced their way, they quickly looked away. When Qian Renshui arrived and saw Yeshi sulking, She went over and pinched her cheek. "Are you angry?" "No," Yeshi replied immediately. "All right, let's go back to Lakeside Pavilion and talk," Qian Renshui said, taking Yeshi's hand and leading her out. Once they left, the hall returned to its rush of activity. Ye Qingshe was the busiest of all. She had to inventory the supplies taken from the 7-treasure glazed tile school and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, calculate pensions for the fallen members of Frost Snow Pavilion, arrange resettlement for displaced maids and commoners, and deal with 100 other matters, both large and small. When she finished counting the goods from the 7-treasure glazed tile school, she couldn't help but exclaim, the school truly lived up to its reputation. The hall alone could build 3 more snowy domain cities without breaking a sweat. Roughly estimated, these supplies would sustain the entire Frost Snow Pavilion for nearly 100 years. In comparison, the provisions taken from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan seemed pitifully small. That wasn't to say the clan was destitute, only that the 7-treasure glazed tile school was extraordinarily wealthy. The people of Frost Snow Pavilion were busy, and the world outside was no calmer. News of the destruction of the 7-treasure glazed tile school and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan spread like wildfire through the Spirit Master world, shocking everyone. Frost Snow Pavilion's reputation soared to its peak. Whispers even suggested it might become the leading sect across the continent. The old hierarchy, the former upper 3 sects, felt like a thing of the past. Among the lower 4 sects, the Windsword sect, Fire Leopard sect, and Quefeng sect fell under Frost Snow Pavilion's influence, while only the Black Tiger sect remained, maintaining a secret rapport with Spirit Hall. The political landscape was changing quietly but decisively. Spirit City, Supreme Pontiff Palace. Bibi Dong sat before a chessboard, staring at the arrangement with unreadable eyes. With graceful fingers, she lifted 2 pieces, tokens representing the fallen 7-treasure glazed tile school and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, and a faint smile touched her lips. All the spirits in the world, only 1 step left, and they'll all belong to Spirit Hall. She murmured, her gaze distant. Only Shui Qinghei's ascension remains. Footsteps sounded in the doorway, and a slightly effeminate voice called from the entrance. "Your Holiness, the High Priest requests your presence." Bibi Dong rose and walked out. She glanced at Yue Guan in the doorway and inclined her head slightly before moving toward the Hall of Offerings. Inside, she found a scene that made her pause. Qian Daoliu sat calmly reading a letter, while a baby on the table beside him drank from a bottle. "Who is this child?" Bibi Dong asked, settling into a nearby seat and teasing the infant with a finger. "Shuer and Sheer picked him up from a village," Qian Daoliu replied, "but his situation is unusual." He pushed the letter across the table for her to read. Bibi Dong skimmed it, eyes flicking over the words. Reincarnation of an evil god king. She raised the baby's chin and examined him closely. No matter how she studied him, he simply looked like a healthier, cuter child than any other, nothing to show he was any supernatural reincarnation. She turned her head to Qian Daoliu. "What do you plan to do with him? Adopt him for now." Qian Daoliu's voice was calm. "After his spirit awakening, we'll judge his talent. If we adopt him, he'll need a name." Bibi Dong watched him consider. "Surname Qian, given name Chen." He nodded once. "Qian Chen. A good name." Bibi Dong playfully poked at the infant. "Your Holiness, I'm getting old. I'm over 100. If you like him, take him back to the Supreme Pontiff Palace." Qian Daoliu smiled faintly at her teasing. The fingers at Bibi Dong's teasing stopped for a moment, and her gaze turned to him. Though Qian Daoliu was over 100 by ordinary reckoning, he looked like a man in his 30s or 40s. No surprise, since a peak Douluo could live for centuries. He was also the angel god's envoy. In this world, age measured differently. Still, he was in his prime. "Forget that." Bibi Dong shook her head. "Keep him in the Hall of Offerings. When he's older, I can teach him some spirit theory in my spare time." "That will do." Qian Daoliu stood, lifted Qian Chen, and departed with the baby in his arms. Bibi Dong watched him go for a moment, then rose and followed. Meanwhile, at Frost Snow Pavilion, 4 days of cleanup had settled the problems left by the 7-treasure glazed tile school and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. Ye Shi sat in the main seat of the pavilion, Ling Yuan behind her. Ghost Leopard and Demonic Bear flanked the front, while others stood in order according to rank. "Has Ningrongrong been found?" Yeshi asked softly, flipping through reports. "Pavilion Master, we've scoured the 7-treasure glazed tile school, every room, every pit, but there's no sign of Ningrongrong," came the report. "We questioned surrendered subordinate sex. None know her whereabouts. From our deductions, she was likely sent away long before the fall." Yeshi set the reports down and tapped the armrest, her blue eyes thoughtful. "If she can't be found, then so be it. Don't waste manpower on it. Carry on with everything as planned. Aunt Ye will continue to handle the internal affairs of Frost Snow Pavilion." She motioned for the others to withdraw. Ningrongrong, a lifelong 79th rank spirit with little threat and constant need of protection, wasn't worth draining resources over if she truly had vanished. After the hall emptied, Yeshi signaled to Ling Yuan and left Frost Snow Pavilion for the Royal Palace. At the Tiando Royal Palace gates, a carriage bearing the imperial crest rolled out. Shuike stuck her head out and waved. Shui Qinghe returned the gesture. As the carriage pulled away, Yeshi and Ling Yuan passed by. Shui Qinghe called out with a teasing smile, "Sister, you've gone soft." Yeshi came to stand beside him, voice low. "Perhaps." Shui Qinghe tapped her gently on the head and followed them into the palace gardens. Yeshi looked at the passing scenery and asked quietly, "When do you plan to move?" "Tonight." He glanced at the time. "Tomorrow morning, Shui Qinghe will ascend the throne and become the new emperor of the Heaven Do Empire." He grinned, half joking. "If Xi'er is interested in being empress, Shui Qinghe could always abdicate for you." Chapter 363. Tiando changes its owner. "Empress?" someone ventured. Yeshi's eyes flicked around, then she shook her head decisively. The offer of becoming empress was tempting, but only slightly. She already entrusted Frost Snow Pavilion's affairs to Ye Qingxue. The thought of managing the daily burdens of state made her head ache. Seeing her refusal, Shui Qinghe merely smiled and said nothing more. They returned to the crown prince's palace and waited in silence. Late that night, news of Emperor Shuiye's passing quietly spread through the Tiando royal palace. Under Shui Qinghe's orders, the imperial guards sealed the palace and enforced strict martial law. The guards then delivered the news to the civil and military officials across the Heaven Do Empire, and before dawn, many of them hurried to the palace and assembled outside the main hall. Early the next morning, the main hall doors opened. Inside, armored guards bearing long swords stood at attention on both sides. Shui Qinghe sat on the dragon throne. Yeshi took the first seat below him. "Last night, Imperial Father passed away from illness," Shui Qinghe announced. "He left an imperial edict naming me his successor. Do any of you have objections?" A minister immediately rose. "Your Highness, since there is an imperial edict, could you present it? Also, by custom the late emperor should be buried first, and then a propitious day should be chosen for the succession." Before the minister could finish, Yeshi calmly drew the slaughter sword and began peeling a piece of fruit. "A country cannot be left leaderless for even a day," she said. "Given the circumstances, the rites can be simplified. Today is a good day." She glanced around the hall. "Besides, this sword is no ordinary blade. It kills without staining blood. I only offer my opinion. Ministers, if anyone objects, speak now." Shui Qinghe raised a hand. Instantly, the guards on both sides drew their swords. Some took positions at the hall's entrance, their gazes fixed on the assembled ministers. Silence wrapped the chamber. One minister stepped forward and knelt. "Your Highness, what His Highness Yaoyang has said is reasonable, and by my calculations, today is auspicious for Your Highness to ascend the throne. There is no time to waste. We petition that Your Highness take the throne immediately." He spoke with forced righteousness, but his eyes were on the drawn swords. Whether the move strictly followed etiquette mattered less than the reality of the situation. The guards and the long blade in Yeshi's hand left no room for dissent. "We, your ministers, second the motion," came the chorus from below. Those who remained silent made their choice by omission. "If that is agreed, the succession will be simplified. Prepare the ascension ceremony within half an hour." Shui Qinghe declared with a thin smile, rising from the throne and leaving the hall. Yeshi gave a brief, significant look to the ministers, then left with him. Half an hour later, under expedited rites, Shui Qinghe ascended the throne as the new emperor of the Heaven Do Empire. His first act was an imperial edict to the vassal states: submit completely to the empire or face military conquest. With the court adjourned, Shi Qinghe and Ye Shi inspected the national treasury. Gold coins were piled like a small mountain. The sight made Ye Shi think of them as little more than numbers. "The Heaven-Do treasury is still well stocked," she observed. "Want to transfer some back to Frost Snow Pavilion?" Shi Qinghe asked faintly. "Forget it," Ye Shi smiled. "The 7 treasure glazed tile school's family fortune already belongs to Frost Snow Pavilion. We lack nothing." Qian Renshui, who had been watching, nodded. "Tell my body double to take my place temporarily. Let him impersonate Shui Qinghe and announce his abdication once the vassal state situation is settled." A soft light shimmered around Qian Renshui, and she reverted to her true appearance. She tugged Ye Shi out of the treasury, excitement bubbling in her voice. Having been hidden in the empire for nearly 20 years, she finally felt the long plan reach its conclusion. The remaining matters could be left to the double. Unforeseen complications were not her concern now. With Shi Qinghe holding power in the palace and Frost Snow Pavilion dominant outside, their control felt as steady as Mount Tai. Qian Renshui found her double and gave meticulous instructions before she and Ye Shi left the palace for Frost Snow Pavilion. On the streets of Heaven-Do City, Qian Renshui looped her arm through Ye Shi's. "Sister, should we celebrate?" Qian Renshui asked, eyes bright. "Celebrate?" Ye Shi repeated. "Yes, we must celebrate properly. When we return to Frost Snow Pavilion, I'll write to the Supreme Pontiff Palace. We'll invite the high-ranking members of Frost Snow Pavilion, Tian Yao, Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, Huo Wu, and the others." Ye Shi smiled. Qian Renshui's pleasure widened her smile in response. They went straight to Lake Heart Pavilion rather than the main hall. The pavilion buzzed with life. Tian Yao and Xiao Bai were laughing and playing. Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, Huo Wu, and others nibbled pastries and chatted. Feng Xiaochen, Huo Wu Shuang, Yu Tianxin, and a few more sat in the shade and talked quietly. The miniaturized Evil Eye Saint King lay dozing in the garden, basking lazily in the sun. After greeting everyone, Qian Renshui retired to Ye Shi's room to compose the letter, while Ye Shi sat in the pavilion, mulling over the arrangements. The Evil Eye Saint King suddenly opened its eyes, rose, and stared in a single direction with an expression of shock and surprise. On the bustling street outside, Gu Yuena halted mid-step and fixed her gaze on that same spot. For a brief, strange moment, the Evil Eye Saint King's look met hers across the distance. Then Gu Yuena withdrew her eyes, resumed walking, and continued down the road with Wang Chuer and Xiao Wu flanking her. Chapter 364, 2 or 3 Cats. Wang Chuer stared at Gu Yuena, who had suddenly stopped, a puzzled look in her eyes. "What's wrong, Nana Jie?" Wang Chuer glanced in the direction Gu Yuena was staring, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. "It's nothing," Gu Yuena said, shaking her head gently as she let her gaze fall back. Her senses could easily reach that way, and what surprised her was that such a small place harbored several divinity inheritors: the Asura god, the angel god, the sea god, the goddess of healing, and even the divine beast of their own spirit beast clan, the Evil Eye Saint King. Gu Yuena was only mildly surprised. Even as inheritors, they were insignificant to her. If they had already become true divinities, only Asura might have been a problem. Everyone else was small fry. Gu Yuena continued on, leading Wang Chuer and Xiao Bai. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Evil Eye Saint King, who had exchanged a look with Gu Yuena from a distance, felt his heart kick. How had the spirit beast co-lord walked out of the Stardew Great Forest? "Should I inform the law enforcement officer?" someone asked. "I only have a one-line connection to the law enforcement officer." "Does that mean I'd have to go to the God realm?" The Evil Eye Saint King replied, eyes flicking around. After a moment's thought, he calmed himself and lay back down. Ye Shi carried a wisp of the law enforcement officer's divine thought on her. If anything truly happened, he wouldn't need to worry. "Tian Yao, Yan Yan, come here for a moment," Ye Shi called, summoning Tian Yao and Du Guyan. "What is it, young miss?" Tian Yao hurried over. Du Guyan joined them as well. "Tian Yao, go inform Aunt Ye and have her tell all the high-ranking members that we'll be holding a banquet tonight," Ye Shi instructed. "Yan Yan, have the maids prepare everything needed for the banquet. It must be of the highest standard." "Yes, young miss." Tian Yao hurried toward the front hall. and Dugu Yan went to notify the maids in the back hall. After those arrangements, Ye Shi rose and returned to her room. Qian Renshui had already finished writing and had sent the letter to the Supreme Pontiff Palace. "Sister, I've arranged the banquet," Qian Renshui said as Ye Shi entered. Then let's wait," Ye Shi replied. "When the banquet begins, we'll celebrate properly." Qian Renshui hugged Ye Shi's waist. Through the window, they could see the maids bustling below, and the two shared a quiet moment of tenderness while outside everything was a flurry of activity. As the sun set and night fell, dishes were laid out in the Frost Snow Pavilion's back hall banquet room, and servers carried in wine. The high-ranking members, dressed in their formal robes, waited as conversation and polite greetings filled the air. Soon the doors opened. Led by Qian Renshui and Ye Shi, Tian Yao, Du Guyan, Ye Lingling, Huo Wu, Huo Wushuang, Feng Xiaoqian, Yu Tianxin, and the others entered the expansive hall. "Everyone, tonight is a banquet for the Frost Snow Pavilion's high-ranking members. Please relax, speak freely," Ye Shi said, sweeping her eyes over the room. She and Qian Renshui took the main seats, and with their entrance, the banquet formally began. Ye Qingshui sat in her place with a glass of fruit wine, enjoying the restful feeling. When her gaze drifted to Ye Shi, she allowed the faintest smile to tug at one corner of her mouth. The decision she had made, bringing the entire Nine-Heart Begonia family into the Frost Snow Pavilion, had been absolutely right. Although Ye Qingshui's own strength was among the lower ranks, her status in the pavilion was high. Most daily affairs were handled by her, and only the matters she could not decide were brought to Ye Shi. It might be tiring, she thought, but it was a sign of trust. Seeing Ye Lingling at Ye Shi's side, her smile softened even more. In a corner of the hall, Yu Tianxin eyed the somewhat sly Huo Wushuang, walked over, and patted him on the shoulder. "What are you doing hiding here alone?" Startled, Huo Wushuang tried to play it off. "What could I be doing?" "I just suddenly realized something," Yu Tianxin said. "Look over at the pavilion master's side." Huo Wushuang followed his gaze. The pavilion master, her older sister, Tian Yao, Yan Yan, Lingling, Xiaobai, they're all getting more beautiful the closer they stand together. It's like a painting. "And your sister, Huo Wu?" Yu Tianxin nodded at Huo Wu, who was approaching. Huo Wushuang turned to look. "Huo Wu? Is she beautiful? For more than 20 years, I've never thought my sister was beautiful." He was cut off when a sharp blow struck his head, nearly knocking him off balance. He turned and saw Huo Wu's slightly gloomy expression. Yu Tianxin quietly stepped back. The small commotion drew a few glances, but people quickly averted their eyes. From the main seats, Ye Shi watched the lively scene with a smile. After finishing the fruit wine in her cup, she rested against Qian Renshui. Xiaobai and Tian Yao began to eat with relish, and Xiaobai accepted all the exquisitely made pastries without hesitation. Outside the banquet hall, the Evil Eye Saint King cast one last look inside, then slipped out of the Frost Snow Pavilion under the cover of night, heading in a single direction. He soon left Heavendew City and arrived in a quiet forest. By a gently flowing stream stood Guyena, waiting. "Evil Eye Saint King," Guyena said as he approached. The Evil Eye Saint King bowed slightly. "Silver Dragon King, you bear the aura of the Asura god," Guyena observed. "Are you planning to betray the Spirit Beast clan?" "I haven't betrayed them," the Evil Eye Saint King replied, voice even. "And besides, I don't have much choice." The Dragon clan's waters ran deep. Even without the Asura god to contend with, he had no intention of getting tangled in the Dragon clan's affairs. Right now, the Dragon clan, or the Spirit Beast clan as a whole, amounted to nothing more than a handful of cats. Chapter 365. What do you think? Guyena stared intently at the Evil Eye Saint King. Her silver eyes held a boundless majesty and the innate arrogance of the Dragon clan. Under her gaze, the Evil Eye Saint King felt a pressure unlike any the Asura god had ever exerted. The Asura god represented absolute might. Guyena's aura was a natural suppression born of bloodline. "Take care of yourself," she said coldly. With that, she was gone. The Evil Eye Saint King watched her leave, then let out a long, relieved breath. After a final glance in the direction she had vanished, he returned to Frost Snow Pavilion. The banquet had already ended. Maids were cleaning up, and the pavilion hummed with subdued activity. Finding a random place to lie down, the Evil Eye Saint King slipped back into his usual languor. Days passed. Under pressure from the Heaven Dew royal family and Frost Snow Pavilion, most of the vassal states, formerly under the Heaven Dew Empire, chose to submit. The rest were being conquered by the army. Gradually, order returned to the empire, until the 4th month. Supreme Pontiff Bibi Dong of Spirit Hall arrived in Heaven Dew City. After meeting Shuang He, who had only been on the throne a few months, a single piece of news rippled out from the Tiando royal palace and swept the continent like a gale. Shui Qinghe was abdicating. The entire Heaven Dew Empire would be handed over and renamed the Spirit Empire, with Bibi Dong as empress. The news set off an uproar. In the Star Luo Imperial Palace study, the Xingluo Emperor read the report with shaking hands. Rage filled his eyes. Useless, he spat. Shui Qinghe is nothing but worthless mud. What are you afraid of? Tell me, what are you afraid of? He demanded, pacing. The Heaven Dew Empire has 1 million armored soldiers, and Frost Snow Pavilion now heads all the sects. Don't you understand how close allies and enemies are, lips and teeth? If Spirit Hall rises against us, what then? He slammed the paper down onto the table, then overturned the table in a fury that scattered maps and documents. The Star Luo Empress entered, and taking in the chaos, understood his anger. Spirit Hall's strength was already enormous. Even with both empires united against it, victory would be difficult. Now, with the Heaven Dew Empire surrendered to Spirit Hall, the balance had shifted entirely. If Heaven Dew had not abdicated and Spirit Hall made a move, our combined armies and the spirit masters from allied sects and noble families could have had a fighting chance, the Empress said quietly. But now, Spirit Hall controls not only its spirit master legions, but also the Heaven Dew armies. Our forces mean little. How can we fight Spirit Hall head-on? The Emperor growled. If Frost Snow Pavilion also bends the knee, then we are finished. There are branch halls of Frost Snow Pavilion inside our territory. If they turn on us, it could be a knife at our back. Your Majesty, what shall we do? The Empress asked as she sat beside him. Mobilize the troops, he replied. Station them along the border. Keep constant watch on Spirit Hall and the former Heaven Dew, now the Spirit Empire. And keep eyes on Frost Snow Pavilion. Shui Qinghe's abdication has put us at a severe disadvantage. Frost Snow Pavilion has only 2 choices: submit to Spirit Hall or go to war. Far away in a branch hall of Frost Snow Pavilion inside the Star Luo Empire, Hall Master Zhuju King read the dispatch from the main pavilion and scanned the faces of the hall's leaders. The pavilion master has sent instructions, she said. We must withdraw from Star Luo City for the time being, but remain hidden within Star Luo territory. Over the next few nights, we'll evacuate quietly. She handed the message to Wind Bailong, Fire Yan Leopard, and the others. Silence followed as they read. We need at least 2 days to withdraw without alerting the Star Luo royal family, Wind Bailong offered. No need to rush. Do it carefully. Everyone prepare, Zhuju King ordered, and the hall sprang into controlled motion. Under cover of night, they would move out. Back at Frost Snow Pavilion's main seat in Heaven Dew City, the Great Hall held its high-ranking members in subdued assembly. The atmosphere was tense. Pavilion Master, everyone should know about the Heaven Dew royal family's situation by now, Ye Qing began. Shui Qinghe's abdication puts Frost Snow Pavilion in a passive position. Our stance toward Spirit Hall should be... She didn't finish, but everyone understood the implication. The hall grew peculiarly quiet. Even Yang Wudi, usually eager for confrontation, said nothing. All eyes shifted to Ye Shi on the main seat. Ye Shi sat perfectly composed, fingers tapping faintly against the armrest as she watched Yang Wudi and Yu Gao's faces. Her calm was absolute. While she remained silent, no one dared speak. After a long moment, she ceased tapping and rested her chin on her hand. Her voice, when it came, was like flowing water, soft, pleasant, but entirely neutral. What are your thoughts on Spirit Hall? She asked, surveying the room, quietly waiting for answers. Chapter 366, Something is Not Right. Yi Qingshe watched Ye Shi sitting calmly in the main seat. Finding her unruffled, she took a quiet step back, unwilling to be the first to speak. Ye Shi's composure was unsettling. No ripple crossed her deep blue eyes. When Ye Shi noticed Ye Qingshe's movement, she only smiled faintly and waited for the others to voice their opinions. Pavilion Master, I have no objection, Du Gubo said. If the Pavilion Master wishes to fight, my old bones are still sturdy. If she prefers peace with Spirit Hall, I have no objection to that either. He glanced around the hall and fell silent. Yang Wudi and Niu Gao exchanged looks, complicated expressions that betrayed old grudges. Though much time had passed since the incident that had destroyed the Clear Sky sect, resentment toward Spirit Hall still lingered. Pavilion Master, Yang Wudi said at last, when we brought our people here, we pledged to follow you. You have kept your promises to us, so we will continue to follow you. Me too, Niu Gao echoed. He added with a small smile, within our ranks, the final decisions have always been mine. Shui Wuchang, Meng Shu, and the other senior officers took their turns. Some wanted to leave the matter to Ye Shi. A few suggested peace talks. Very few advocated war. Ye Shi listened, then raised a hand and silenced the hall. There is something I have kept from everyone for a long time, she said. I came from Spirit Hall, more precisely, from the Qian family of Spirit Hall. She let the words hang for a moment. So there is no question of making peace with Spirit Hall, nor of fighting them. Frost Snow Pavilion will be merged into Spirit Hall. She studied their faces as she continued. I know some of you hate or distrust Spirit Hall, but all of you have bled and sacrificed for Frost Snow Pavilion. If any of you do not wish to come into Spirit Hall with Frost Snow Pavilion, you may withdraw. I will provide full compensation so you can lead your families to establish yourselves elsewhere on the continent. The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to Yang Wudi and Niu Gao, the two who had the worst relationship with Spirit Hall. Yang Wudi looked hard at Ye Shi, then suddenly smiled. When we came here, we said we would follow the Pavilion Master, he repeated. You've kept your word, so we will follow you still. Niu Gao nodded. No one else raised objections. With that, the decision for Frost Snow Pavilion to merge into Spirit Hall was made. Ye Shi waved the senior officers away, then rose and left Frost Snow Pavilion with Ling Yuan. They walked through the bustling streets of Heaven-Do City to a mansion Ye Shi had purchased when she first arrived in the city. It had been left vacant after Frost Snow Pavilion was established. For now, Bibi Dong was staying there. Inside, they found Bibi Dong and Qian Renshui sitting across from one another. Gi Mei and Yu Guan stood behind Bibi Dong. Shi Long and Shi Shui stood behind Qian Renshui. Shir, you're back? Qian Renshui called. Bibi Dong looked up as well. Things went very smoothly, Ye Shi said, taking a seat beside Qian Renshui while Ling Yuan stood quietly behind her. The merger is settled. It only needs to be announced. How about your side? Ye Shi asked, curious. Our side is handled as well, Bibi Dong replied. In 3 days, Shui Qinghe will officially abdicate, and the enthronement ceremony will begin. In 3 days, the Heaven-Do Empire will be no more, replaced by the Spirit Empire. At that time, I will designate Spirit City as the imperial capital, Qian Renshui said. We only need to expand Spirit City with an outer city. Once the Star Luo Empire falls, Spirit City will sit at the center of the new empire. Bibi Dong smiled faintly as she poured tea. In that case, Shir and I will return to Spirit City first. You can take care of things here. Qian Renshui leaned back in her chair, relaxed. There's no rush. I'm heading to Spirit City in a few days as well. We'll go together. Once I'm there, I can begin arranging the abdication, and Shuer will officially become Supreme Pontiff. You should be prepared, Bibi Dong added with a half-smile. The Supreme Pontiff has many official duties every day. Ye Shi poured tea and glanced from Bibi Dong to Qian Renshui. A quiet smile flashed across her face. With the founding of the Spirit Empire, Bibi Dong as Empress would certainly be busy, and Qian Renshui as Supreme Pontiff would have countless official matters to attend. Frost Snow Pavilion's internal affairs were already managed by Ye Qingshui. After merging into Spirit Hall, there would be no external affairs for her to handle. Her days would be comfortable. Tea, pastries, cultivation, and leisurely research into spirit tools. She blinked and realized Qian Renshui had been watching her. What is it, sister? She asked, putting on an innocent expression. Xier, you are the holy maiden of Spirit Hall, Qian Renshui said gently. In the future, the duties of Spirit Hall will fall to you. You? Bibi Dong murmured, smiling kindly. Snowy Domain City. I know, Qian Renshui interrupted softly. The affairs of Frost Snow Pavilion are handled by Ye Qingshe. She waved a hand as she continued, listing the arrangements. Snowy Domain City is managed by Shui Binger, and the Azure Phoenix Enshrinement commands forces to guard the outer regions. The branch pavilions are led by Zhu Juqing, Fire Yan Leopard, and Wind Bailong. Under normal circumstances, they should be fine. Qian Renshui's fingers twirled idly as she appraised Yeshi with a steady, appraising gaze. Chapter 367. Shui Qinghe Gives Way. Yeshi glanced at Bibi Dong, then at Qian Renshui, and lowered her head to think. Everything she had wanted to say had been cut off, anticipated, and preempted, but she stayed composed. Handling the Spirit Hall's political affairs didn't necessarily have to fall to her or Qian Renshui. There was a more suitable candidate, Qian Daoliu, the high priest of the Hall of Offerings. Yeshi even framed the reason in her mind. She and Qian Renshui were about to participate in the divinity assessment, and taking on political duties would slow their cultivation. That excuse should convince Qian Daoliu. She calculated her little scheme inwardly while Qian Renshui idly twirled her fingers, smiling faintly, watching her. Bibi Dong sat quietly, sipping tea. Far north, snowy domain city. Wind howled, and snow fell in steady sheets. Heiyu, stationed in snowy domain city, watched the black-robed person opposite her. Heiyu, do you want to join us? Came a muffled voice. Join you? Heiyu asked. Haven't you realized how badly the Spirit Hall beat you before? The voice pressed. I have status and a position now. I don't have to hide every day. Why would I join you? Heiyu replied with a soft laugh. She recognized the man before her. He had once been an evil soul master like her. She had turned over a new leaf. He had not. The holy cult's cult master is coming, the man said. We already have the strength to contend with Spirit Hall, he added stubbornly. Heiyu's expression didn't change. You still refuse, the man taunted. What does any cult master have to do with me? Heiyu asked. What I'm thinking is, if I capture you, I should get a significant merit, right? He said, eyes cold. Heiyu put her hands behind her back. The black-robed person gave her a long look and snorted. You can try. See if you can catch me, Heiyu answered. He turned and left. Heiyu didn't pursue. She wasn't absolutely confident she could defeat him one-on-one. Otherwise, she would have acted long ago. Only after he disappeared did Heiyu head to the city lord's mansion. In the hall, she saw Shui Binger at a desk, methodically handling official matters. When Shui Binger noticed Heiyu, she set down her pen and looked up. What's wrong? Did something happen? I met an evil soul master, Heiyu said, and I heard some news while talking to him. The holy cult's cult master is coming. Should we report it? Shui Binger's brow creased. Heiyu casually took a seat. Normally, Heiyu rarely visited the mansion. She preferred to stay in her residence to meditate and cultivate. How strong is he? Can you handle him? Shui Binger asked. I don't know his strength, Heiyu admitted. But I probably can't handle him. From what I heard, the holy cult should have the strength to contend with the Spirit Hall. My strength among the titled Douluo is not particularly high. Heiyu's tone carried an edge of seriousness. At 93rd level, she was on the weaker end of the titled Douluo. She felt the incoming cult master must be stronger than her. Then report it, Shui Binger said. I'll notify the pavilion master, and Heiyu, please go to Priest Qingluan and tell her as well. Okay, Heiyu agreed and left. The scratching of pen on paper resumed in the quiet hall. Shui Binger finished the letter, had it delivered, and paused to look around snowy domain city with a touch of emotion. It had once been a remote, insignificant town. Under her management in recent years, it had grown to rival vast sea city. Her biggest gain here had been the legacy of the ice god, which had accelerated her cultivation. Shu Yuer, Shu, and others had also grown rapidly. Stretching, Shui Binger returned to the mansion. There were still assessments to attend. Not long after Heiyu left, she arrived at a pass under construction and found Qingluan there. Heiyu recounted everything in detail. Qingluan's expression grew solemn as she listened. I understand. I'll take extra precautions. You can rest assured, she said, eyes fixed on the distance. Should I ask the Hall of Offerings to send more people? Heiyu asked. Qingluan fell into thought. 3 days later, in Heavendo City, inside the Tiando Royal Palace, all civil and military officials had gathered, silently watching Shui Qing'e and Bibi Dong before them. Shui Qing'e rose from the throne, gestured for Bibi Dong to sit, and bowed slightly, an act of submission. Effective immediately, the Heavendo Empire is renamed the Spirit Empire, Bibi Dong announced. The Spirit Empire's imperial city will be Spirit City. Prepare for the capital relocation starting tomorrow. The title of Yaoyang Prince will remain, and she will be further honored as princess. The entire far north will be granted as Yaoyang's fief. Guimei, Yuoguan, you two will temporarily take charge of all imperial guards within the royal palace. One decree after another flowed from Bibi Dong's lips. Her majestic gaze swept the hall. Everyone meeting her eyes instinctively bowed their heads, no one daring to object. Ye Shi stood beside Bibi Dong, turning over her plans. Having the entire far north effectively under her influence was a boon, yet cities were few and far between there. Snowy Domain City, the wealthiest, had been built with her investments. The far north was vast, but she could not build cities for sheer pleasure. Thinking of the far north and the modest treasury of the Frost Snow Pavilion, Ye Shi shook her head and discarded the idea of personally funding development. Better to have others pay. Her mind raced. Her azure eyes brightened with schemes. Bibi Dong glanced at Ye Shi. She didn't know exactly what Ye Shi was plotting, but her intuition warned her it would not bode well for certain people. After issuing a string of new decrees, Bibi Dong escorted Ye Shi out of the imperial palace. As they walked back, Bibi Dong glanced at Ye Shi, who was deep in thought at her side, and asked, "Shier, what are you thinking about?" "Aunt Dong, how do you plan to deal with the old nobles of the Heaven Do Empire?" Ye Shi's eyes shone with curiosity. "The old nobles?" Bibi Dong echoed. "Are there any good ones among them?" "Of course we'll execute the ringleaders and punish the lesser offenders. The rest will be handled as the situation requires." As she spoke, Bibi Dong noticed Ye Shi's gaze linger on something. Then an idea crossed her mind. "You're not thinking of sending the old nobles to the far north, are you?" "The far north is bitter and cold. They won't willingly go." Bibi Dong's steps slowed. "It needs developing. As for whether they're willing, that's not for them to decide. The strong have the right to set the rules. The weak must accept them. If they want to talk, we can talk. If they refuse, we can overturn the table. Tell me again, are there any good people among the nobles?" Ye Shi's hand drifted toward the Heaven Do auction house, the implication clear. Selling slaves and human trafficking were the auction house's common trades. "All right. Then arrange it yourself." Bibi Dong nodded and didn't press further. Back at their courtyard, Qian Renshui sat at ease, nibbling pastries. "Is everything settled?" she asked. Qian Renshui rose and stepped in front of Ye Shi and Bibi Dong. "Yes, everything's handled." She smiled warmly. "We can leave the rest to others here. We can go home." Bibi Dong smiled in return. Qian Renshui stretched, waved, and had a carriage prepared to return to Spirit City. While the carriage was readied, Ye Shi went up to the Frost Snow Pavilion alone to tie up some matters, then returned to the mansion. A carriage waited in front. Shilong and Sishui sat at the reins, and Qian Renshui leaned out the window, waving Ye Shi in. After Ye Shi climbed aboard, Qian Renshui glanced around again. "Where's Ling Yuan? Aren't you taking her with us?" "I left Ling Yuan at the Frost Snow Pavilion," Ye Shi answered casually. "She can handle things here." In the past, Ling Yuan had accompanied her because Ye Shi's strength was weaker and needed protection. Now Ye Shi could protect herself. With Bibi Dong, Shilong, and Shishui in the carriage, Ling Yuan's presence wasn't necessary. The carriage, driven by Shilong and Shishui, rolled away. Qian Renshui and Ye Shi sat cross-legged inside, meditating to cultivate their power. Bibi Dong pulled back the window curtain and watched the passing scenery in silence. Time passed. While cultivating, Ye Shi suddenly felt her spirit power falter. Opening her eyes, she found the scenery around her shifting rapidly. A blood-red palace sprang up before her, and on the main throne sat the Asura god. Ye Shi took in her surroundings and fixed her gaze on him. "Did something happen?" she asked. "Why did you pull me here like this?" Ye Shi's voice held confusion. "There's a problem with the seal in the Forbidden Land," the Asura god said solemnly. "What's sealed inside is about to come out." "What does that have to do with me? I can't do anything, even if it breaks loose." Ye Shi's face showed surprise for a moment, then she composed herself. She already knew the Golden Dragon King was sealed in the Forbidden Land, but knowing and being helpless were different things. She was only a spirit saint now. Even if the Golden Dragon King escaped, there was little she could do alone. "My point is, speed up your cultivation," the Asura god said. Once you reach Spirit Douluo, you can try absorbing that set of spirit bones I gave you before. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I'm cultivating hard myself. I awakened my spirit at 6 and reached Spirit Saint by 11. My cultivation speed isn't unheard of, but it's faster than most, Yeshi said earnestly. I know. I wouldn't choose a slow heir, the Asura god replied with a faint smile. I only came to tell you the thing in the Forbidden Land is about to emerge, and to casually urge you to hurry. He snapped his fingers. The surrounding palace shattered like glass. Make me cultivate faster. You're not planning to run away and leave me to deal with this, are you? Yeshi asked, but the Asura god offered no answer. The vision dissolved completely, and Yeshi's consciousness snapped back to her body. She checked the time and thought hard about what the Asura god had said. He sounded inclined to avoid confronting whatever lay in the Forbidden Land, but regardless of his intentions, Yeshi had to continue cultivating. She calmed her mind and resumed meditation. Several days later, the carriage returned to Spirit City. After a day's rest, Bibi Dong began preparing for the Supreme Pontiff's succession ceremony, which lasted a whole day. Qian Renshui was officially installed as Supreme Pontiff of Spirit Hall. On the second day after her succession, Qian Renshui and Yeshi entered the Angel's secret realm to take their assessments. The day-to-day affairs of Spirit Hall were handed to Qian Daoliu, and under his management, the hall ran smoothly for several days. Tensions flared on the border. The Luo Empire had mobilized a large army, and Bibi Dong countered by deploying the Spirit Empire's forces. For a while, there was a palpable strain between the two sides, but neither dared make the first move. The Spirit Empire had just absorbed the Heaven Do Empire and had much to deal with internally. Bibi Dong herself had to take part in the divinity assessment. The Luo Empire hesitated as well, so despite the standoff, outright war did not break out, and the continent remained relatively calm. A month slipped by. Then a letter from Snowy Domain City arrived, pulling Yeshi out of the Angel's secret realm. As she read its contents carefully, her brows couldn't help but knit together. Chapter 369. To be successful in life, it's all about connections and background. A moment later, Yeshi relaxed her brows and took 3 10,000-year mysterious ice marrows from her spirit tool. Shilong, I'm sending you to Snowy Domain City in the far north. In Snowy Domain City, first pick up Shui Binger. Then, together with Shui Bingshen, go to the far north core area, find the dominator of the far north, the Snow Empress, and give her these 3 10,000-year mysterious ice marrows. Also, deliver a message for me. The Ice Empress is doing well with me. No need to worry. If possible, ask the Snow Empress to look after Snowy Domain City. Yeshi spoke earnestly. Young miss, you can rest assured. I will carry out your orders, Shilong replied, bowed slightly, accepted the marrows from Yeshi, and left the Hall of Offerings at once. After Shilong departed, Yeshi watched the direction of the far north and murmured, to get ahead in life, it's all about having connections and a background. Luckily, I have both. She smiled faintly. The Snow Empress is an absolute dominator in the far north. With these 3 10,000-year mysterious ice marrows delivered, her power should be terrifying. She returned to the Angel's secret realm. Time moved on. Qian Renshui, Yeshi, and Bibi Dong all threw themselves into cultivation and their assessments. Tian Yao and Xiao Bai returned to Sea God Island to continue their evaluations. Ye Lingling followed the goddess of healing to her assessment site, accompanied by Du Guyan. Spring passed into autumn. In the first year, under Bibi Dong's guidance, the Spirit Empire began to stabilize. Nobles formerly loyal to the Heaven Do Empire, subtly nudged by Yeshi, relocated to the far north and began developing there. Frost Snow Pavilion also established its development center in the far north. In the second year, Yeshi, now 19, reached level 80 spirit power while accompanying Qian Renshui on her assessment. The spirit ring she bound was a god-bestowed ring from the angel god. After reaching level 80, Yeshi began attempting to absorb spirit bones. Her spirit power climbed rapidly. Having absorbed all the spirit bones she could, Yeshi rose to level 87 Spirit Douluo. In her spare time, she continued researching spirit tools, eventually producing up to level 7 spirit tools. By the third year, tensions with the Luo Empire had grown. The Spirit Empire stationed 700,000 soldiers and nearly 100,000 Spirit Master legions along the border. The Douluo Empire, for its part, had almost 1 million troops deployed, nearly all their forces committed. A light drizzle fell one morning. Ye Shi stood on the city wall of Jialing Pass, holding an umbrella, quietly watching the Douluo border. "Peace never lasts long," she sighed. "What do you mean?" Hulina asked, standing beside her. "The war between the Spirit Empire and the Douluo Empire is about to begin," Hulina said. Ye Shi looked ahead calmly. "Oh," Hulina sounded untroubled. The conflict was inevitable, everyone knew it, and she wasn't particularly worried about the outcome. The Douluo Empire had no real advantage. The Spirit Empire not only had a massive army, but also nearly 100,000 Spirit Master legions. In terms of elite power and basic combat capacity, Spirit Hall held an absolute edge. Worse for Douluo, times had changed. Their army still relied on swords and blades, while the Spirit Empire had begun using spirit tools. Though not yet numerous, those tools were already enough to pose a serious threat. "Nana, let's head back," Ye Shi said, and began to walk down from the pass. "Xiaoxi, should we make some preparations?" Hulina asked, hurrying to keep pace. "No need," Ye Shi replied. "Just increase patrols. We only need to defend Jialing Pass." "Is defending the city really enough?" Hulina blinked in surprise. "Going on the offensive will always cost more lives," Ye Shi said. "Defending the city will minimize casualties." Hulina weighed the logic, but still looked uncertain. "If we just defend, are we waiting for the Douluo Empire to surrender on its own?" Hulina then said slowly, "Do you know the Frost Snow Pavilion has a branch temple?" Ye Shi smiled faintly. "I know. It was originally established inside the Douluo Empire." Hulina thought aloud. "So where are they now?" Ye Shi stopped and looked at her with a half-smile. "Now that you mention it, I don't recall seeing anyone from that branch at Spirit City." Hulina's eyes widened. "They wouldn't still be inside the Douluo Empire, would they?" Ye Shi tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and regarded Hulina quietly. "That's a question the Douluo Emperor probably wants the answer to as well." Hulina's expression darkened with thought. If the Frost Snow Pavilion's branch remained inside Douluo territory while fighting flared at the border, the Douluo Empire's rear would be dangerously exposed. A strike at that moment could devastate them. The possibility of hitting the Douluo Emperor from behind made Hulina's gaze toward the enemy lands tinged with satisfaction. Back at her temporary residence in Jialing Pass, Ye Shi set up a chessboard, placing pieces one by one until the final arrangement pleased her. She smiled and said quietly, "Douluo Emperor, let's see who can hold out the longest." Across the border, at the Douluo Empire's front, the Douluo Emperor sat in his main seat, surrounded by generals led by the Great General. "Your Majesty, we are ready," the Great General reported, bowing with fierce resolve. "We will follow the original plan." "Do it as planned," the Douluo Emperor said. "We must succeed. Failure is not an option. If we fail, victory will be even harder to obtain. If it comes to that, I will lead the charge myself." The Emperor's face was solemn as he surveyed the hall, then rose from the main seat and strode out. Chapter 370. Times have changed. Night fell. Thunder rolled through the clouds and the rain suddenly intensified. Under the cover of darkness and the noise of the storm, an armored host marched out of the Douluo Empire's border city, led by the Douluo Emperor himself, heading for Jialing Pass. "Your Majesty, the men in Jialing Pass won't expect an attack in the rain. In these conditions, we have a good chance of taking the pass by surprise," said the Grand General, falling into step beside the Emperor. "You will command later," the Emperor replied with a slight nod, saying nothing more. They advanced until they were still some distance from Jialing Pass. The Grand General signaled, the troops fell silent and moved stealthily toward the walls, their approach masked by the patter of rain. On Jialing Pass's battlements, the Holy Knight Order of the Spirit Hall was tightening its formation. Guards paced every 3 steps, sentries posted every 5. Defenses were strict. A flash of lightning lit the sky and briefly revealed movement below. A vigilant Holy Knight glanced down. In that instantary glow, he saw figures slipping toward the gate. "Alert," he said, halting and raising a hand. At once, the soldiers along the wall began knocking arrows and drawing bows, aiming into the darkness below. The Holy Knight walked to the edge of the battlements, breath held, eyes narrowed. When he confirmed the approach of an enemy force, a faint, almost imperceptible smile crossed his face. "You, report to young miss. Tell her we're under attack," he ordered. "You, rouse everyone in the Holy Knight Order and bring up the soul guidance cannons. You, tell the city troops to stand ready." Orders flew fast and precise. Within minutes, the soul guidance cannons had been manned and hauled onto the battlements. The Holy Knights and city soldiers came up in disciplined ranks, weapons ready. The Star Luo army closed in on their firing range. The Holy Knight at the wall raised his hand and announced, "Let them see how times have changed." The soul guidance cannons roared to life, fired, and the air filled with explosions. Whole ranks of the Star Luo troops were torn apart. Those too close were reduced to blood spray and shattered limbs. "What is that?" the Star Luo Emperor demanded, looking from the carnage in his lines to the walls above with dawning alarm. Being detected partway through the advance was one thing. He had prepared for a forced assault, but this was not ordinary arrow fire. These were shells that detonated in the ranks. He reacted instantly. "Charge!" he ordered, and led the assault himself. The Grand General stayed at the rear to coordinate the troops, but the Emperor spearheaded the attack. Arrows hissed down from the battlements as soon as his men reached the base of Jieling Pass, striking soldiers who had thought themselves safe in the rain. Battle cries rose and fell like waves. The Star Luo Emperor released his spirit. 9 spirit rings shimmered across his body, and he soared into the air, braving the hail of arrows toward the top of the pass. Just as he neared the battlements, Ye Shi appeared above the wall. She held a drink in one hand, her azure eyes cool as she regarded the Emperor hovering in the rain. Ling Yuan stood behind her, holding an umbrella over her head. Behind them stood Gi Mei, Yue Guan, Shi Long, and Shi Shui, 4 titled Douluo, and the revered elders Guangling, Qianjun, and Xiangmo. For a heartbeat, the two sides sized each other up. Then Gui Mei, Yue Guan, Shi Long, and Shi Shui released their spirits and dashed toward the Emperor. "He's actually higher than I am," Ye Shi observed, taking a slow sip. She watched the scene below, and seeing that the Holy Knights and city troops were responding in an organized manner under their commander, decided not to interfere with the direct command. Professional matters, she thought, belonged to professionals. "Ling Yuan, you go help," she said, taking the umbrella from him and watching the battle unfold. Ling Yuan moved to assist. Guangling stepped to the battlement, released his spirit, the Guangling divine bow, drew and loosed arrows of spirit power that needed no aiming. Each arrow pierced a dozen men at once. Blood mixed with the rain and drenched the ground, staining the earth red. Bodies lay in puddles, and even with the steady downpour, the metallic tang of blood filled the air. "How's the situation?" Hu Liena ran to Ye Shi's side and looked down from the wall. "We're holding the pass," Ye Shi said calmly. From her vantage point, she estimated the casualty ratio, roughly 1 defender to 30 attackers. The Star Luo Empire's brutal assaults would cost them many men to kill a single city defender. "The wall has limited space," Hu Liena muttered, restless. "Why don't I lead a Spirit Master squad out to meet them?" "No need," Ye Shi replied. "If they want to attack the pass, let them. The advantage is ours. Even if the Star Luo Emperor throws everything at it, he still can't take Jieling Pass, and since we won't lose, we should minimize our casualties." Ye Shi handed the umbrella to Hu Liena. The 10-winged killing angel spirit manifested behind her, 8 spirit rings flashing along Hu Liena's form. The spirit's abilities flared. 7th spirit ability, Martial Soul True Body. 6th spirit ability, Ice Sword Judgment. A vast angelic phantom materialized, black wings beating the storm-swept air. From its motion, crystalline ice swords condensed and plunged down into the enemy ranks. As the blades struck, gore sprayed into the sky. The stench of blood grew stronger. The Star Luo Emperor, struck amid his men, was flung from the air and crashed heavily onto the rain-slick ground. "Stop them!" someone shouted. The Emperor rolled, trying to regain his footing as troops swarmed around him. Gui Mei and Shi Shui were the first to break through, charging into the melee straight for the fallen leader. Chapter 371, Why Weather Modification. After Gui Mei and Shi Shui had cut through the enemy ranks for a while, they pulled back and hovered in midair, their gazes sweeping over the army below. Sixth spirit ability, Lament of Ice and Snow. The sixth spirit ring on Yexi's body flickered again. A wave of biting cold radiated outward from her as its center. Under the downpour, the walls of Jialing Pass froze in an instant. Rainwater passing through that extreme cold turned to hail and pelted the Star Luo Empire's troops. Armor on many soldiers within the area began to ice over visibly. The metallic clinks and pings of freezing armor echoed nonstop. The Star Luo Empire's great general stared blankly at the scene. How can this even be weather modification? Another officer muttered. How are we supposed to attack the city now? The great general's mouth twitched. In mass battles, a titled Douluo's role was limited. Spirit power drains quickly, and a titled Douluo could be surrounded and overwhelmed by numbers once exhausted. But large-scale spirit abilities were devastating against ordinary soldiers. A slightly higher-ranked spirit power meant a wide-area ability could kill on contact. Yet this weather manipulation went beyond expectation. The city walls were frozen solid. Not only was it impossible to assault the walls, but even getting close was perilous. The rain had become hail, battering the troops. "Your Majesty," the great general said, pointing at Yexi hovering above. "That angel spirit who activated her martial soul true body must be contained. It's already hard to attack. If we don't restrain her, forcing an assault on the city will be impossible." The Star Luo Emperor glanced at Yexi, helplessness in his eyes. "How do I contain her?" "If I could get up there to contain her, I wouldn't be down here. I'd be on the walls myself," the great general replied. The emperor looked at his own injuries, thought for a moment, then his expression hardened. "Try again. Attack the city at all costs. If it fails, withdraw." "Yes, Your Majesty." The great general issued orders and pushed the army forward. But despite risking everything, the effect was negligible. Soul Guidance cannon shells pummeled the Star Luo forces, and as they tried to close in the hail and freezing air took hold, soldiers' armor iced over, some turning into frozen statues, others shivering uncontrollably. A few who braved the cold reached the base of Jialing Pass, only to be met by a hail of arrows from the ramparts. In the end, tens of thousands fell under Jialing Pass before the Star Luo army began an orderly retreat. After the enemy withdrew, Yexi retracted her spirit. "Clean up the battlefield," she ordered. "Count the losses and issue triple compensation to the families of the fallen." With that, Yexi led the way back to her temporary residence. On the other side, the Star Luo Emperor returned to the city and ordered a tally of casualties. When the numbers were laid out, he slammed his fist down on the table. "This was the first battle, and our losses are already so heavy." "Please calm yourself, Your Majesty," the great general said. "Although the losses are significant, they're still within an acceptable range. Provisions in the city will feed the army for about half a month. Once the next supply convoy arrives, we can attempt another assault. The immediate priority is figuring out how to take Jialing Pass." The great general knelt and spoke plainly. "This is a war of attrition. See whose resources give out first. Jialing Pass has 700,000 defending soldiers and 100,000 spirit masters. Their daily consumption is no less than ours. Perhaps we should try to cut off their supply lines." The Star Luo Emperor didn't answer immediately. He weighed the possibility in his mind. Meanwhile, within the Star Luo Empire's Black Tiger sect, the sect master spread a map across the table and looked over to Zhuju King, Fire Yan Leopard, Wind Bailong, and the sect master of the Qifeng sect. "According to our intelligence, Star Luo City currently only has tens of thousands of Imperial Guards, with the Star Luo Empress presiding. All four of our sects together number over 2,000 Spirit Masters. With our strength, taking Star Luo City should be manageable." He cast a questioning glance around the room. "If we take the city, the army stationed there will likely fall into chaos." Wind Bailong nodded. "The Star Luo Empress is powerful, but she's a spirit Douluo alone. 4 of us against 1 is a favorable mismatch." The sect master of Qifeng tapped Star Luo City on the map. "When do we strike?" "Don't rush," Fire Yan Leopard said. "According to what we received, a convoy is escorting provisions to the border tomorrow. We seize that first. It will relieve the pressure on Jialing Pass and further weaken the palace's defenses. Then, our 4 sects strike the Imperial Palace from different directions." The Black Tiger Sect master drummed his finger on the map as the others agreed. Juju Qing cleared her throat. "What do you want me to do?" "Don't interfere. This is serious business," someone replied. "You can stay here and handle affairs. Whether you come or not won't change much. At the Spirit Emperor rank, one more or one fewer is negligible." The sect master of the Black Tiger Sect glanced at Juju King and then looked away. "Yes, stay back and manage things." The sect master of Quifeng waved a hand, but Wind Bailong looked thoughtful. "Wait, bring Zhu King with us. The Star Luo Empress and the current crown princess are both from the Zhu family. Having Zhu King with us could bring unexpected advantages." Wind Bailong stroked his chin, consideration evident in his face. Chapter 372, Locking the Army at the Border. The others turned their gazes to Juju King, expressions thoughtful. Juju King blinked a few times, looking a little puzzled. "All right," she said. "First, write a letter to young Miss and let her know." "We'll officially begin the operation," Feng Bailong replied. Feng Bailong wrote down what they had discussed, summoned a carrier pigeon, tied the letter to it, and released the bird. When that was done, everyone exchanged glances and went to make their preparations. One day later, on the city wall of Jialing Pass, Ye Shi was inspecting various defensive positions, Ling Yuan keeping half a step behind. A cry rang out from the distance. Ling Yuan looked up to see a carrier pigeon and held out her hand for it to land. "Young Miss, a message has arrived." Ling Yuan removed the letter from its envelope and handed it to Ye Shi. Ye Shi skimmed it quickly, a thoughtful look gathered in her blue eyes. "Bring all the senior officials to the main hall for a meeting immediately." A ripple of spirit power in her hand tore the envelope apart. She stepped down from the wall while Ling Yuan hurried off to summon the leaders. In the main hall, Ye Shi took the central seat, her silver hair falling naturally as she rested her hand against her face. Her eyes were half closed while she waited. Soon the senior officials filed in, led by Guangling, and took their places. Ye Shi opened her eyes. "I just received word. The forces I planted behind the Star Luo Empire will intercept the grain and supplies being moved from Star Luo City to the border tomorrow night, and they'll also try to take Star Luo City. If they succeed, how many troops will Jialing Pass need for absolute security? The rest will be sent to bypass the Star Luo border and cut off the retreat of their army. That way, we trap the Star Luo army here." Her gaze fixed on the Holy Knight, the man in charge of Jialing Pass's defenses, who would know best how many defenders were needed. "Young Miss," the Holy Knight said, "if your people can capture Star Luo City and cut off their grain supply, then trapping the Star Luo army at the border is entirely feasible. For a purely defensive posture at Jialing Pass, with spirit tools at our disposal, 200,000 troops would be enough to guarantee absolute safety. Our Spirit Empire could spare at least another 300,000 for the defense of Jialing Pass. But everything depends on taking Star Luo City. If that fails, then bypassing the border and leaving them no supplies does nothing. They'll still have what's already in hand. In that case, it's not us trapping them. It will be them trapping our army." He explained his assessment in full. Ye Shi nodded and turned her attention toward the Star Luo Empire, calculating where she could open a spatial rift. "I can quietly send troops behind the Star Luo border. For Star Luo City, we wait for confirmation. Prepare our forces," she ordered. Jialing Pass has 700,000 troops and nearly 100,000 Spirit Master legions. 30,000 will remain to garrison the pass. The rest will be divided into two groups. If Star Luo City falls, I will send them behind the Star Luo border." Ye Shi rose and left the main hall. The other officials dispersed to make arrangements. Back in her residence, Ye Shi glanced at the miniature Evil Eye Saint King lying lazily nearby. She sat, propped her leg on the creature, and thought. "It's been so long," she reflected. "I wonder how Sister and Aunt Dong's assessments are going." Qian Renshui and Bibi Dong were both focused on their evaluations, so Spirit Hall was being run by Qian Daoliu for the time being. Ye Qingshui was handling the Spirit Empire's political affairs, and Ye Shi herself had been stationed at Jialing Pass. The Evil Eye Saint King raised its head, looked at the leg resting on it, and then at Ye Shi, who was lost in thought, and returned to its indolence. It had a premonition that, Unless something unexpected happened, it would become Yexi's 9th spirit ring. Yexi's 8th spirit ring, gifted by the angel god, was already nearly 1,000,000 years old. The Evil Eye Saint King couldn't imagine any other being on the continent with a cultivation age greater than 1,000,000 years, discounting those beneath the life lake, of course. Hu Liana came in with a drink and sat beside Yeshi. Xiaoxi, what are you thinking about? Nothing much, Yeshi said, taking the cup and sipping. Once the Star Luo matter is settled, we can relax a little. Hu Liana leaned back, eyes on the blue sky. The Star Luo Empire? If everything goes smoothly, we should be done in about a month, barring accidents. Yeshi smiled faintly. If it doesn't go smoothly, we'll just wait and adapt. Hu Liana glanced at her and nodded, understanding at least part of what she meant. Meanwhile, inside the Star Luo Empire, a quiet forest hid a very different scene. Fire Yan Leopard, Feng Bailong, the masters of the Black Tiger and Kui Feng sects, and disciples from their sects had come to lay an ambush. Is the intel solid? Feng Bailong asked the Black Tiger sect master. Don't worry, it's absolutely correct, the Black Tiger sect master replied, pounding his chest. If I'm wrong, I'll personally go before your majesty to face punishment. Satisfied, Fire Yan Leopard and the Kui Feng sect master signaled, and their disciples melted into the shadows to wait. The Wind Sword sect and Black Tiger sect disciples did the same. The sun set and night fell. The quiet forest filled with the sound of measured footsteps. Hidden among the trees, Fire Yan Leopard, Feng Bailong, and the Kui Feng sect master exchanged a look with the Black Tiger sect master and gave the silent sign. They waited for the convoy to walk into their trap. Not long after, an armored army bearing supplies appeared on the road, an escort marching steadily along, exactly as they had been told. Chapter 373, Night Attack on Xingluo City. Once the convoy escorting the supplies rode into the encirclement, Feng Bailong and his men, concealed in the shadows, struck first. Chaos erupted like a storm through the silent forest. Although the convoy outnumbered them, Feng Bailong's group were all spirit masters, while most of the escort were ordinary soldiers, so the fight was one-sided from the start. After roughly 2 hours, the battle was effectively over. After clearing the field, Feng Bailong sent part of his force back to the Black Tiger sect with the supplies. The rest slipped away under cover of night towards Star Luo City. Inside the imperial palace, in a hall of austere splendor, the Xingluo Empress sat with a dispatch in her hand, rubbing her temples. Her delicate face had gone tired. From these reports, there's no hope, she muttered. The rise of the Spirit Empire can scarcely be stopped now. News of the first clash between the Star Luo Empire and the Spirit Empire had come back, and the results were grim. In the number of Spirit Masters, the Star Luo forces were at a disadvantage. Jialing Pass's passive defense strategy had only bought time. The Spirit Empire was clearly poised to press its advantage. The Empress set the paper aside and stared toward the border. If the Star Luo Empire falls, she wondered aloud, soft and distant, do I die with it or find a way to survive? She was unlike the Star Luo Emperor. She did have options. The Yuming Duke's mansion had an exit if it chose to use it. The Duke's second daughter, Zhu Qing, was currently a branch hall master in the Frost Snow Pavilion and held a respectable position there. If the mansion surrendered, Zhu Qing's standing might secure honorable treatment for them. The thought gave her some bitter comfort. A sudden commotion shattered the hush. The Empress rose, displeased, and stepped into the corridor. A guard came running toward her, breathless. Your Majesty, something's wrong. What is it? She asked sharply. The Wind Sword sect, the Fire Leopard sect, the Black Tiger sect, and the Kui Feng sect. They've brought troops and are attacking the palace, he blurted. The Empress's eyes widened. What did you say? Isn't the city under martial law? Isn't the Yuming Duke in charge of the defenses? How could an assault reach the palace without alarms? My lord, the Yuming Duke ordered the gates opened, the guard reported. They've already come within 100 paces of the palace. Before he could finish, he suddenly felt an invisible force sweep through the hall. He flew backward and slammed against the marble wall, knocking the wind out of him. This Empress is not blind, the Xingluo Empress said, voice cold as ice as she faced the men who had entered the palace. Her gaze passed over Feng Bailong and his companions and landed on Yuming Duke, standing slightly behind them. The Duke would not meet her eyes. "You're planning a rebellion?" she demanded. Feng Bailong stepped forward, calm but forceful. "Your Highness, if by rebellion you mean choosing to survive rather than be buried with a sinking regime, then yes. But hear reason first. The Starluo Empire cannot win. It's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Stubbornness will only bring ruin." "You could surrender with dignity," he added. "With your talents, you would find a place, within the Spirit Hall or under the Spirit Empire. There's no need for needless bloodshed." Before the Empress could answer, the Black Tiger Sect's master growled, "Cut the talk. We didn't come to debate." He released his spirit and charged. The Empress had no time to hesitate. She released her own spirit and met him head-on. "Rebellion?" She spat between gritted teeth. "What do you mean, rebellion? The Wind Sword Sect serves Frost Snow Pavilion. The Pavilion Master is the Princess of the Spirit Empire. I am of the Spirit Empire originally. We were never traitors. How is this rebellion?" Feng Bailong's eyes flicked toward Yuming Duke. If anyone had betrayed the city, it was him. He didn't defend the accusation, and that spoke volumes. Still, Feng Bailong moved with lightning speed, releasing his spirit to press the attack. The masters of the Fire Leopard and Kui Feng sects joined him. Outside, the disciples of the four sects swept to surround the palace. Feng Bailong, the Black Tiger Sect master, the Fire Leopard master, and the Kui Feng master were all 8-ring spirit Douluo. The Empress was an 8-ring spirit Douluo as well, but she was soon outnumbered and stalled by coordinated strikes. Feng Bailong's words continued, even as his sword struck for vital points. "Your Highness, the fate of the Starluo Empire is sealed. Why cling to delusion? The Yuming Duke's mansion has surrendered. Starluo City has effectively fallen to us. There's no turning the tide." A punch from the Black Tiger Sect master smashed into the Empress, sending her hurtling into the palace wall. The masonry crumbled with a thunderous crash, and a cloud of dust rose. The Empress staggered free, wiped blood from her mouth, and fixed her eyes on Feng Bailong with fierce defiance. He was the one who struck hardest, both persuading and assaulting. The Empress had just deflected a blow when a streak of sword light whistled toward her. She twisted aside with a fluid motion, then lifted a hand and called out sharply, "Wait!" Feng Bailong, the Fire Leopard master, and the others exchanged glances. They paused their blows, swords still raised, ready to strike in an instant. The hall hung tense as the Empress stood amid the dust and ruin, the moonlight catching the edges of the torn banners, and the city outside quietly shifting beneath the shadow of a new order. Chapter 374, A Man of Insight is Wise. The Xingluo Empress swept her gaze over Feng Bailong, Fire Yan Leopard, and the others who surrounded her, then across the disciples from the four sects encircling the Starluo Imperial Palace, and finally to Yuming Duke standing at the very back. She let out a long sigh. A wise person submits to circumstances. "I think what Feng Bailong just suggested is worth discussing," she added. To show respect, the Empress was the first to withdraw her spirit. Feng Bailong and the others exchanged glances and followed suit. After a brief consultation, they all smiled faintly, while the Empress could only sigh inwardly. Starluo City had changed hands without bloodshed. A carrier eagle rose from the palace and flew toward Jieling Pass. After a few quick arrangements in the city, the Xingluo Empress was placed under house arrest. The masters of the Black Tiger and Kui Feng sects remained in Starluo City to stabilize things, while Feng Bailong and Fire Yan Leopard led their disciples toward the Starluo Empire's border. The eagle reached Jieling Pass after a night's flight. It landed on Ling Yuan's outstretched hand. She took the dispatch and hurried to Yexi's chambers. Bowing slightly, she announced, "Young miss, a letter has arrived." Yexi scanned the message, then twirled her fingertips and rose from her seat. "We can move now." "Ling Yuan, go inform them," she ordered. As Ling Yuan left to spread the word, the forces at Jieling Pass sprang into action. The garrison there numbered 700,000, with the Spirit Master Legion nearly 100,000 strong. 300,000 troops were left to guard the pass. The remaining 400,000 soldiers and the Spirit Master Legion were split into two contingents, commanded by Gui Mei, Yue Guan, Chanjun, and Jiang Mo. Yexi released her spirit, snapped her fingers, and opened two spatial rifts. "Proceed according to plan," she instructed. If anything forces you to retreat, send a signal. I will open another spatial rift to bring you back. Everyone agreed and led their units through the rifts. Once they had passed, the openings closed as if they had never been there. Yi Shi looked over those who remained, then fixed her eyes on Ling Yuan. Prepare yourself. Tonight, we'll launch a night raid to sow chaos. A holy knight responsible for Jieling Pass's defense stepped forward. Young miss, our garrison is sufficient for defense, but attacking a city with only 2 of you is risky. The enemy opposite fields nearly 1,000,000 troops and many spirit masters. If something happens to you, we won't have an explanation to give the Supreme Pontiff and His Majesty. I know, Ye Shi replied coolly. The night raid will be just Ling Yuan and me. You just need to keep the city secure. If something goes wrong, I'll use spatial ability to extract Ling Yuan. The Holy Knight hesitated, but could not change her mind. Ye Shi's confidence wasn't empty, though her formal rank put her at an 8-ring spirit Douluo. Absorbing the complete set of spirit bones during the assessment had boosted her power significantly. The spirit bones complemented one another, forming a kind of spirit bone armor that enhanced her combat capability beyond her ring count. Watching Ye Shi leave, the Holy Knight exchanged a look with Ling Yuan, who only shrugged and fell in step. Night fell. Dressed in black, Ye Shi slipped from her quarters. Ling Yuan stood at the door for a moment, then followed as Ye Shi snapped her fingers and opened a spatial rift. They stepped through and emerged in a border city under Douluo control, its streets patrolled by soldiers. We'll split up, Ye Shi whispered. You set fires, I'll find their provisions. Ling Yuan didn't hesitate. She released her spirit. 9 spirit rings flickered around her. 8th spirit ring, boiling blood, she murmured. A searing feather appeared in her hand, and with a tight grip, she scattered countless fiery feathers from midair. They landed on roofs and dried timber and instantly burst into flames. Screams and shouts cut through the night as chaos spread. Soldiers rushed to douse the flames while others chased after the arsonist. The city's great general quickly ordered his forces to fight the fires, diverting many troops from patrol and response. Ye Shi moved silently through quieter, heavily guarded quarters until she found the supply depot, provisions stacked like small hills. From her storage bracelet, she took lamp oil and poured it carefully over the stockpiles. Nearly 1,000,000 troops depending on those supplies. Cutting off or destroying them would be devastating. She snapped her fingers, opening a small spatial rift to ignite the oil, then slipped through and vanished. The guards on the perimeter twitched as a scent of smoke reached them. Before they could fully react, a figure appeared in midair. Chapter 375. The eldest sister is bullying the second sister. 6th spirit ability, Ice Sword Judgment. Countless ice swords plunged down into the enemy ranks, tearing through men and sky alike. Blood sprayed in the air. The attackers faltered, then quickly rallied. Bows were drawn, and a dense cloud of arrows shot up toward Ye Shi as she hung in the sky. Seeing the volley bearing down and the supplies already blazing, Ye Shi opened a spatial rift without hesitation and slipped through it. Once she vanished, the remaining troops, now properly organized, began putting out the fires and sent messengers to report what had happened. High above, the Douluo Emperor led his men in pursuit of Ling Yuan, who streaked ahead. A spatial rift opened in front of Ling Yuan. He hesitated for a moment in surprise, then dove straight through. The rift closed behind him. The Douluo Emperor's face went deathly pale watching him disappear. Organize the main army. Put out the fires at once, he ordered. Then tally the losses. He struck the table hard enough to splinter it. By dawn, the fires in the city were extinguished. In the solemn main hall, the Douluo Emperor sat on the throne, frowning as the great general reported the aftermath. Your Majesty, casualties among the troops are not severe, but the loss of provisions is substantial, the great general said. What could have lasted us half a month will barely hold for 7 days even under extreme rationing. The Douluo Emperor slammed the table again. Despicable, he spat, to sneak in and set fires, burn our supplies. His fury left him shaken, but his immediate worry was practical. Without provisions, ordinary soldiers would be useless in long campaigns. Hunger breeds trouble. Mutiny was not out of the question. Send word to Douluo City. Tell them to send more supplies. We're cutting meals from 3 to 2 a day for now. Move the remaining provisions to another location. Guards every 3 steps, sentries every 5. No more surprises. He waved the great general away. Back at Jialing Pass, Yeshi and Lingyuan returned to find a familiar figure waiting. Sister, what are you doing here? Yeshi slipped an arm through Qian Renshui's and smiled. I finished the 8th angel trial, Yeshi said, her blue eyes calm. I thought I hadn't seen you in a while, so I came to visit. She glanced at Lingyuan. I took him on a little midnight raid to the Star Luo border. Qian Renshui's gaze flicked over Yeshi, and she pinched her cheek. How did it go? Not bad. We set a few fires and burned some of their provisions. Yeshi recounted the night in detail. The 8th angel trial is complete. If I pass the 9th, I'll become a divinity. Then, she twirled her fingers, a playful thought rising. Maybe my plan to counter-push you, sister, can still happen. Qian Renshui smiled, about to answer, when a small head popped out from behind her. Second sister, what about me? Qian Chen's voice was soft and sweet. Yeshi glanced at the child and lightly flicked his forehead. Although the Asura god had told her this, Qian Chen was the reincarnation of the evil god king. There was no hint of that in his current appearance. He looked every bit a chubby, mischievous child. I see you. Sister, why did you bring him too? Yeshi pinched his baby-soft face. Just taking him for a walk, Qian Renshui said dismissively. Little Chen, go play with Lingyuan. She just returned and needs to rest. Lingyuan took Qian Chen and strolled around Jialing Pass. After they wandered the pass, Lingyuan bought Qian Chen a candied hawthorn stick and brought him back to their residence. Passing Yeshi's room, Qian Chen paused, listening. Big sister is bullying second sister? He murmured, mouth already full of sticky hawthorn. He reached out toward the doorway, but Lingyuan scooped him up lightly. I'll take you to play somewhere else. Wait, Lingyuan? Listen to me. Qian Chen tried, but Lingyuan cut him off coldly. I don't want to hear it. Her tone was blunt and final. Having followed Yeshi for over 10 years, she knew exactly what she should and shouldn't listen to. 3 days later, on the Star Luo border, the Emperor's temper boiled over again. He banged the table until it broke. Useless. Worthless. Who can tell me what happened to Star Luo City? He demanded. Our retreat route was cut off and we only found out too late. What use are you to me? The great general answered cautiously. Your Majesty, with rationing, the current supplies will last 4 more days. Without rationing, they'd last only 2. Ration what? The Emperor shot back. If the retreat is blocked and there's no resupply, let the soldiers eat their fill. Once they're fed, we launch a full-scale assault on Jialing Pass, no matter the cost. Either we take Jialing Pass or we die here. Madness flickered in his eyes. The officers below bowed and left to prepare. The Star Luo Emperor remained alone in the vast hall, staring toward Jialing Pass, hands clenched. With the retreat cut off, there was no way out. Compared to the 2 armies holding the rear, each with 200,000 soldiers and nearly 50,000 Spirit Master units, Jialing Pass's defenders were relatively weak, mostly ordinary troops numbering around 300,000. Attacking Jialing Pass now was the only viable option. He drew a long breath, hardened his resolve, and strode out of the hall. Chapter 376, Attack on Jialing Pass. On the walls of Jialing Pass, Qian Renshui and Yeshi stood side by side, watching a dust-filled horizon. He's in a hurry, Qian Renshui said softly. The Star Luo Emperor is desperate, Yeshi replied. Judging by this momentum, he's throwing everything at Jialing Pass in one last counterattack. In the distance, armored ranks and lines of soldiers emerged. We expected this, Qian Renshui murmured. Their supplies must be running out. If we can hold, we win. Yeshi's voice remained calm. The defending troops, under the Holy Knight's command, moved with quiet precision. Guangling appeared on the wall, released his spirit, and stood ready with his bow drawn and an arrow nocked. As the Star Luo Empire's forces entered range, the Soul Guidance cannons fired in unison, their blasts tearing into the attackers. Still, disciplined by their commanders, the Star Luo troops continued to press toward Jialing Pass. Attack the city. Take Jialing Pass at all costs, orders rang out. Whoever takes Jialing Pass will be rewarded with 1,000 gold and ennobled as a duke. The army surged forward. Blood spattered the air and bodies fell below the pass. The cries of battle never ceased. The earth was soaked red beneath the walls. Though the Star Luo Empire threw itself at the gate time and again, Jialing Pass held like a massive, immovable mountain. As the sun sank, the intensity of the assault eased slightly, and the defenders allowed themselves a brief exhale. But soon they realized the enemy planned to press through the night. Day and night assaults exhausted both sides. Yeshi even considered a decapitation strike to break the enemy's morale, but the Star Luo Emperor stayed hidden among his troops and never revealed himself. With no clear target, the plan had to be abandoned. On the third day, Qian Renshui and Ye Shi climbed the wall as usual, expecting the usual onslaught. But what rolled toward them this time was the main army, its spirits flagging and discontent plain on many faces. The two exchanged a glance and smiled. Given the situation, if nothing unexpected happens, they must be out of provisions, Qian Renshui said softly. Hold out this last day, and we'll win. Ye Shi nodded. A horn sounded, and another assault began. But its ferocity had diminished drastically from the previous days. By the fourth day, virtually anything edible in the Star Luo camp had been consumed. By the sixth, the attackers were so starved that the Jialing defenders hardly needed to fight. Simply tossing down a steamed bun would spark a scramble. By the 10th day, Ye Shi had 2 baskets of steamed buns on the wall and watched the starving soldiers below fight over them, sometimes clinging to a scrap as if it were treasure. The outcome is decided, Ye Shi said. If you're willing to lay down your arms and surrender, I'll make sure you get a full meal at once. Her tone was measured. The words planted hesitation in the enemy ranks, but when the first man dropped his weapon and stripped off his armor, it set off a cascade. One by one, they surrendered. Seeing the tide turn, the Star Luo Emperor slapped the shoulder of the man beside him, then charged the pass in a last desperate bid. If he could not win, he would drag others with him. He came on like a man embracing mutual destruction. Ye Shi remained seated, unmoved. Ling Yuan stepped out from behind her to meet the emperor, and Guangling loosed arrow after arrow. The mid-air clash was brief. With a curtain of blood mist falling, the Star Luo Emperor fell. His death marked the complete collapse of the Star Luo Empire's campaign. Accept the surrendering soldiers, Ye Shi ordered. Those still clutching weapons and refusing to surrender, bury them. Send word to Spirit Hall. Tell Ye Qingshe to wrap things up here and increase the compensation to the fallen soldiers threefold. She was about to rise when she noticed Qian Renshui looking uneasy. What is it, elder sister? Ye Shi asked. Qian Renshui hesitated, then said softly, Ye Qingshe might be overwhelmed. How about having Shui Wuchang handle the follow-up? Her gaze drifted toward Spirit City, which was bustling with activity. Is Spirit City very busy? Ye Shi asked, then nodded in acceptance. Let Shui Wuchang take care of it. Spirit City. In the governmental palace, Ye Qingshui sat at her desk, dazed beneath a mountain of paperwork. Officials kept placing more documents before her with brisk efficiency. Put the Spirit Empire's papers to the left. Put Spirit Hall's papers to the right. Frost Snow Pavilion's matters go in the middle. Put the Far North's reports behind Frost Snow Pavilion. Bring urgent items forward. Non-urgent ones go to the side. Ye Qingshe didn't look up at first, but as the piles mounted, she lifted her head and rubbed her temples. It was an honor to be entrusted with so much, though she was neither the Empress of the Spirit Empire, the Supreme Pontiff of Spirit Hall, nor the Pavilion Master of Frost Snow Pavilion. She was handling the paperwork for all three. The responsibility left her with a throbbing headache. At first, it had only been Frost Snow Pavilion's affairs, familiar work. Then the responsibilities of Spirit Hall were added, which, after Frost Snow Pavilion, seemed manageable. Finally, with Bibi Dong in seclusion, the Spirit Empire's governmental matters began to pile up as well. Ye Qingshui muttered to herself, feeling both touched by Ye Shi's trust and inwardly reluctant to leave her desk amid the chaos. Chapter 377, Call for Support. After that, the political affairs only multiplied. The defense clan was to build a city outside Spirit City. Construction was needed in the far north. Petitions arrived from every corner of the Spirit Empire. Jialing Pass still needed to prepare for war. Logistics, supplies, and countless other details all fell to Ye Qingshe. It was fair to say she lived and slept with paperwork. The daily workload was enormous. She handled so much that it felt like dealing with 40 pounds of documents each day. and still requests piled up faster than she could finish them. Not long ago, the Supreme Pontiff had made a public appearance, and Ye Qingxie had hoped for a little respite. Instead, the Supreme Pontiff had come through, offered some encouragement, and then gone to Jialing Pass, leaving Ye Qingxie to face another flurry of regional affairs. She picked up her pen and dove back into the backlog. 3 days later, Qian Renshui, Ye Shi, Qian Chen, Hu Lina, and the others returned to Spirit City. After sending Qian Chen off to play, the group went straight to the palace where state business was handled. Inside, they found Ye Qingxue looking haggard. "Aunt Ye, you've really been working hard," Ye Shi said, sympathy in her voice. "Why don't you go rest for a while?" Ye Shi's concern was obvious. Ye Qingxue's burdens had clearly taken their toll. Ye Qingxue stood and bowed slightly to Qian Renshui and Ye Shi. "Young lord, young miss," she said, taking a slow breath. "These are my duties, but could you find a few people to share the load? I could use some help." She managed a wry, tired smile. Qian Renshui and Ye Shi exchanged a glance, and both looked to Hu Lina. Hu Lina blinked innocently. Then, without fuss, an extra table appeared in the council hall. She took up a pen and began going through files alongside Ye Qingxue. "Shui Wuchang is dealing with the aftermath at Jialing Pass and can't be freed right now," Ye Qingxue explained. "Bring Niu Gao, Yang Wushuang, Huo Wu, Huo Wushuang, and Feng Shaoqian. Let them share the work." Ye Shi snapped her fingers lightly, and messengers were sent at once. More desks materialized. More hands bent over paperwork. Ye Shi retreated to her room to cultivate. Qian Renshui went to the Angel's secret realm to prepare for his final assessment. Meanwhile, the Spirit Empire's army moved to consolidate territory taken from the Star Luo Empire and pacify the local populace. Months slid by. During that time, Ye Shi's spirit power rose steadily to the 88th level Spirit Douluo. Just as she was settling in to continue her training in peace, Ling Yuan came knocking, bearing 2 letters. Ye Shi opened the door. Ling Yuan bowed and handed over the letters. "These were sent by young Miss Tian Yao and Ye Lingling," she reported. Ye Shi unfolded Tian Yao's letter first. The opening line read, "Young Miss, I was beaten by a big whale. I can't beat it. The assessment is stuck." Tian Yao's message boiled down to a simple plea for support. Ye Shi knew immediately the big whale meant the deep-sea demon whale king. She considered the gap in strength between herself and the deep-sea demon whale king, and, with a faint narrowing of her eyes, put that letter down and read Ye Lingling's. The truth was clear. While an 8-ring Spirit Douluo could rival a peak Douluo, the difference between a peak Douluo and an ultimate Douluo was tremendous. Ultimate Douluo were beyond ordinary human limits. Poseidon was the strongest in the sea among the original 3 ultimate Douluo, and whether even Poseidon could defeat the deep-sea demon whale king was uncertain. Ye Shi herself was not at her best fighting in the sea. Ye Lingling's letter was also a request for aid, also about spirit beasts, but her problem was far less daunting than Tian Yao's. After a few moments' thought, Ye Shi decided on a plan. First go to the Forest of Healing to help Ye Lingling and her group, then gather a team to take on the whale together. If teaming up was an option, it made no sense to fight alone. They had people to send. Ye Shi had good relations with the Snow Empress of the Far North and could trade 10,000-year mysterious ice marrow for assistance if needed. She even had connections in the God Realm. She penned a reply to Tian Yao and had Ling Yuan arrange for delivery. Then she stood and headed for the Angel's secret realm to bid Qian Renshui goodbye before leaving. On the other side of things, on Sea God Island, Tian Yao sat by the sea with pastries in her lap, gazing out at the blue horizon. Her spirit power had climbed quickly as well. She was now at level 80. When she learned her assessment required killing the deep-sea demon whale king, she'd felt exhilarated. The chance to win a spirit ring couldn't be more fitting. She had secretly reconnoitered the demon whale sea area. Only with the protection of the vast sea cosmic shroud had she managed to return unscathed. If she couldn't defeat the beast herself, she would call for help. The first person she thought to ask was Ye Shi, the standard of invincibility among the younger generation. When the young lord didn't act, Ye Shi was practically unbeatable among peers. Who was stronger between the young lord and the young miss? Tian Yao didn't matter. She wanted the best possible backup. As she mused, a small hand reached out from the water and snatched a pastry from her lap. Tianyao turned toward the sea. Xiaobai, if you want a pastry, just take one. Why be sneaky? Who's being sneaky? I took it openly, came the reply as Xiaobai surfaced, munching. By the way, what about the assessment? Don't worry, Tianyao said confidently. I've called for reinforcements. With the young miss coming, we'll have no problem. What if Yeshi can't beat it? Xiaobai asked, his mouth full, suddenly serious. Tianyao waved a dismissive hand. She'll figure something out if that happens. Xiaobai tossed another fragment of pastry into his mouth. That's why you had her come, right? Their eyes met across the sea, and the surrounding sounds dwindled until only the wind and the whisper of waves remained. Chapter 378, Healing Forest. After bidding Qian Renshui goodbye, Yeshi left Spirit City alone and headed south for the Healing Forest. It lay at the continent's southern edge, but using her spatial ability, she reached it in under 3 days. She paused at the fringe, taking in the vibrant primeval woods, then stepped in. Following the directions in the letter and watching the forest around her, she soon found the clearing at its center, where 2 figures lounged against an ancient trunk. Ye Lingling and Du Guyan stood up and greeted her with smiles as she approached. Xiaoxi, you finally made it, Ye Lingling said, linking her arm through Ye Xi's. Yan Yan's so useless. She couldn't beat it, Ye Lingling added teasingly. What do you mean useless? Du Guyan protested, looking a little offended. I tried my hardest, okay? It's just that my strength wasn't enough. If not for me, could you have stayed so comfortable in the forest? All right, Ye Lingling laughed. First, tell me what happened. Yeshi smiled at her and explained, my assessment task is to obtain the Cloud Dream Lapis Grass guarded by the Guardian Spirit Beast. That Guardian's tough, Ye Lingling warned. It's a 100,000-year spirit beast. Is that so? Yeshi said, considering it. Let's see if I can get a companion slot. If not, we'll go deal with the Guardian directly. She snapped her fingers, and Ye Lingling led the way. Not far on, they came to a dark green stone pillar set with a gem and ancient runes. Ye Shi placed her hand on the pillar. A flash of light answered, and a new companion slot opened for her. Ye Shi couldn't help admiring the advantage of being the Asura god's legacy holder. It practically guaranteed her companion slots in other divinity assessments, and a companion slot meant she could receive rewards. There were exceptions. She'd tried the Rakshasa god's assessment before and gotten nothing. Yet even Bibi Dong, the Rakshasa legacy holder, had received no reward from that trial, so Ye Shi could accept the anomaly. After a brief rest, Ye Lingling guided them to the assessment site, a sunken valley. Coiled in the center was a 1,000-legged magic dragon, more like a massive, centipede-like dragon some 20 meters long, and in the midst of its coils grew a small patch of grass that glowed faintly, the color of lapis lazuli. So we only need to take that grass? Ye Shi asked softly. Yes, Ye Lingling replied, but as soon as anyone steps into the valley, the 1,000-legged magic dragon will attack. It can't leave the valley, and its attacks don't reach outside. Be careful. Ye Shi picked up a stone and with perfect aim, flung it at the dragon's head. The rock struck with a sharp sound. The dragon lifted its head, eyes blazing with fury, but it stayed within the valley. Ye Shi tossed another stone. The dragon easily dodged it. On the third throw, it seemed to lose patience and surged toward the entrance, but a faintly glowing light barrier blocked it. The dragon roared, corrosive saliva dripping onto the ground and releasing a foul, greenish smoke. Ye Shi calmly tore a thick branch from a nearby ancient tree, weighed it in her hand, and walked back to the valley mouth. Under the stares of Ye Lingling, Du Guyan, and the raging dragon, she drew a straight line in the dust and struck the beast's exposed body with the branch. The blow did little damage, but it was an insult the dragon sensed. Human, if you've got the guts, come in, the dragon bellowed. If you've got the guts, come out, Ye Shi replied coolly. Whatever it screamed, it couldn't leave the valley, and its attacks couldn't reach beyond the barrier. It was a big, angry target. Ye Shi glanced at Ye Lingling and Du Guyan. They understood without a word. They began picking up stones and pelting the dragon. The rocks didn't hurt it, but they enraged the beast, which kept smashing itself against the light barrier. While the dragon was preoccupied, Ye Shi opened a spatial rift. Simultaneously, Another rift rippled into existence right beside the cloud dream lapis grass. She extended her hand and plucked the glowing grass with effortless ease. The dragon turned, sensing something. It lunged toward the grass, but the rift vanished along with Yeshi and the prize. Yeshi reappeared at the valley mouth, holding the cloud dream lapis grass and weighing it in her hand as she shot the dragon a provocative look. Done. That was nothing. She tossed the grass to Yelingling. Almost immediately, a voice filled their minds. Assessment complete. Legacy holder, Yelingling. Reward, all her spirit rings age increased by 10,000 years, spirit power rank increased by 1 level, and affinity with the healing goddess increased by 20%. Companions, Duguyan, Yeshi. Reward, their spirit rings age increased by 10,000 years, spirit power rank increased by 1 level. Yeshi felt the surge as her spirit power rank rose and smiled faintly. This is a lot faster than cultivating on my own. Yelingling and Duguyan looked a little dazed. Too easy, they agreed. Yelingling muttered, spatial attribute is really useful. Duguyan's eyes flickered as she schemed inwardly. For my next spirit ring, maybe I should find a spatial attribute spirit beast and see if I can gain spatial abilities. With that, Yeshi and Yelingling turned and left, leaving the valley behind. The thousand-legged magic dragon, which had guarded the cloud dream lapis grass for who knew how long, roared furiously as it crashed against the light barrier again and again, unable to get out or recover what had been taken from it. Chapter 377, Instructions from Above. They walked through the forest. Yelingling carefully tucked away the cloud dream lapis grass, glanced at Yeshi beside her, and asked softly, Xiaoxi, are you going back to Spirit City? Yeshi paused, then shook her head gently. I'm going to the extreme north first. I need to ask the Dominator there for help. Tianyao's assessment will need some support too, Yelingling added. Yelingling lowered her head to think. Should we come with you? Yeshi's eyes swept across Yelingling and Duguyan. After a moment, she shook her head. No need. You two focus on your assessments. That whale in the sea, without peak Douluo's strength, won't be helped by either of you. Yelingling and Duguyan exchanged a look and didn't feel discouraged. It was only natural that their current power couldn't help with something so ancient and vast. All right, Yelingling said. We'll concentrate on our assessments. I'm leaving now. Yeshi said her goodbyes and walked out of the forest. Duguyan watched her go, then sighed and linked arms with Yelingling. Lingling, you two have to look after me from now on. As the saying goes, it's good to rest in the shade of a big tree. Her eyes sparkled. The earlier gloom vanished. Yelingling tried to pull her arm back a couple of times but failed and eventually gave up, her expression twitching with amusement. Just past the healing forest, as Yeshi prepared to head north, a small familiar spirit beast appeared in her path. She froze. Closer inspection revealed it was her own pet, a miniature evil eye Saint King. The little beast spoke in human words. There are instructions from above. They want me to go with you to the sea area. Under Yeshi's astonished stare, it grew to its normal size. The evil eye Saint King explained solemnly that ever since meeting Yeshi back in the Starluo Empire, it had felt a connection and had wanted to follow her. After receiving guidance from a law enforcement officer, it decided to protect her in secret. It denied rumors that the Asura god had beaten it into obedience. Whether others believed that version or not didn't matter. It believed its own story. Yeshi narrowed her eyes. She suspected the Asura god had indeed arranged this, and she didn't buy the sentimental explanation. Still, the evil eye Saint King lay down and motioned for her to climb on. She mounted, and the ride felt good enough. At least she liked the mount. The evil eye Saint King carried her toward the sea, and as they sped along, it grew boastful about its power. I'm a rank 2 god. Against that big whale, I could handle 8 at once with 1 claw, no pressure. On the continent, it was confident, claiming no one would dare dispute its ranking except the spirit beast co-ruler, Gu Yuena, who would naturally sit above it. Rank 2 god? Yeshi murmured, a faint smile lifting the corner of her mouth. She was only a spirit Douluo. Having a rank 2 god as a mount felt almost indulgent. Suddenly, the evil eye Saint King froze. It had felt a tremor of something from the direction of the god realm, a bad premonition it couldn't place. What's wrong? Yeshi asked. Nothing, the beast said after a moment, forcing its gaze away. Then it resumed its course toward the sea, God Realm, the God Forbidden Zone. The ice god, standing sentinel over the seal of the Forbidden Zone, watched the fishers spidering through the barrier with grave eyes. "Notify them," she ordered. "The seal can't hold much longer." Not long after, 3 god kings and a host of main gods gathered before the failing seal. Most wore solemn expressions as they watched the barrier crack. The angel god and the Rakshasa god were the exceptions. The Rakshasa god's face grew increasingly relaxed as she estimated the time left. By the speed the seal was breaking, her legacy successor would finish the final assessment and officially take the Rakshasa god title before the seal fully collapsed. When that happened, she would have already retired. The fate of whatever lay within the seal would be someone else's problem. "Should we lower the difficulty of the assessment?" someone asked. "I'll leave early then," the Rakshasa god murmured, musing aloud. The angel god beside her narrowed her eyes at that expression. Based on everything she knew of the Rakshasa god, the angel god guessed exactly what her counterpart was thinking: an early exit. Their legacy locations were close to each other. Escaping was not a complicated plan. The seal continued to crack, and the gods watched as time ran out on the barrier that had held back whatever secret lay within the Forbidden Zone. Chapter 380. Mighty above the boundless sea, the Evil Eye Saint King carried Ye Shi as they sped toward Sea God Island. Feeling the sea breeze, Ye Shi reached out and stroked the Saint King's head, smiling. "No wonder the sea god needs a mount," she murmured. "Having a mount really makes a difference." At the edge of her vision, Sea God Island gradually came into view. In a few heartbeats, the Evil Eye Saint King set Ye Shi down above the island, and at her signal it descended to land. The moment they touched down, Poseidon appeared before them. "Senior," Ye Shi bowed slightly, showing deep respect. "Sheer, after a few years, your growth has been remarkable," Poseidon said with a smile. "You flatter me, Senior," Ye Shi replied politely, then asked the purpose of her trip. "Where's Tian Yao?" "Over by the Ring Sea," Poseidon pointed. "I'll go find Tian Yao and the others first." Ye Shi nodded and headed for the Ring Sea. Poseidon took one long look at the Evil Eye Saint King trailing behind Ye Shi, a thoughtful expression crossing her face before turning toward the Sea God Hall. As soon as Ye Shi entered the Ring Sea's reach, Tian Yao came running, then leapt into her arms, squeezing her tightly. "Young miss, you're finally here. You don't know, I was flattened by a huge whale. If it weren't for the vast sea cosmic shroud," Tian Yao's voice was half complaint, half relief. Ye Shi tapped her forehead. "First, put me down. I know more about that whale than you do." Tian Yao protested, then obeyed and set Ye Shi on her feet. Her gaze immediately locked on the Evil Eye Saint King behind Ye Shi. "Hiss, this tiger is truly majestic." Tian Yao scrutinized the great mount, comparing it to Xiao Bai's true form in her mind. No matter how she compared them, the Evil Eye Saint King simply felt cooler, more obedient, more powerful than the devil spirit Great White Shark. "All right, the Evil Eye Saint King is like Xiao Bai. Both are mounts from above," she concluded. Ye Shi glanced at her and then addressed the Saint King. "Saint King, please bring the Deep Sea Demon Whale King from the Demon Whale Sea area." "No problem," the Evil Eye Saint King replied, and turned to leave. Tian Yao watched the departing Saint King with envy. Before seeing it, she'd assumed all mounts were like Xiao Bai. Now she realized mounts could be far more formidable and obedient. She looked back at Xiao Bai, sprawled on the sea surface, happily eating pastries, and felt the gap keenly. Xiao Bai, sensing her stare, glanced back. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing. Keep eating, Xiao Bai," Tian Yao said, then pulled Ye Shi toward the shore. Demon Whale Sea area. The deep-sea demon whale king was dozing with one great eye closed when it sensed movement above. A massive claw filled its vision, then slammed down with irresistible force, spinning the whale several times in the water. "Oh, big whale," the Evil Eye Saint King said mildly. "Don't blame me. This king is helpless." Divine force rippled along the Saint King's claw as it struck the deep-sea demon whale king. Having captured the Evil Eye Tyrant Sovereign before, the Saint King was practiced in the routine this time. Physical persuasion to batter it nearly senseless, sealing its spirit power and voice, then hauling it away. Satisfied with his work, he headed back toward the Ring Sea. Above the Ring Sea, he dropped his captive. the deep-sea demon whale king crashed into the water, sending up a torrent of spray that alerted everyone on the shore. Tian Yao and Xiao Bai sprang to their feet. Seeing the half-dead deep-sea demon whale king, Xiao Bai, head of the devil spirit great white shark clan and long at odds with the demon whale, charged and struck the creature. Ye Shi watched with a shadow over her expression. If her memory served, Xiao Bai's final fate would be to fall to the Devil King, and the real Devil King should be dormant somewhere in the deep. Before she could dwell on it, Tian Yao walked over and landed the finishing blow. With a howl that echoed across the waves, a spirit ring burst from the whale's body, mostly golden with streaks of red. Tian Yao sat cross-legged and guided the ring to herself, beginning to absorb it. A prompt from the sea god appeared in Ye Shi's mind. By assisting Tian Yao in the assessment, Ye Shi's spirit power rose one level. She had reached the bottleneck of level 90. Feeling the surge of power, she set aside the Devil King's matter for the moment and turned her attention to the last spirit ring, sacrificed to her. The Evil Eye Saint King heard Asura God's voice in his mind. Law Enforcer, must I really sacrifice? I still have uses, the Saint King thought, protesting inwardly. When my legacy becomes a god, I'll resurrect you, Asura God replied coldly. It won't be long. Consider it sleep. The Saint King glanced helplessly at Ye Shi below, then unleashed a tremendous burst of divine force, forming a unique domain around himself. Boss, when you become a god, please don't forget me, he called to Ye Shi. A beam of light descended, and a golden spirit ring, ancient and profound in aura, landed on Ye Shi's body. Ye Shi blinked. I didn't mean for you to sacrifice yourself. My mount, just gone? But the sacrifice had already been made. She sat cross-legged and began to absorb the Evil Eye Saint King's spirit ring. The ring's energy felt fundamentally different from ordinary spirit power, pressing upon her as she absorbed it. Because of that, the process was agonizingly slow.